So last weekend I went to Istanbul for the Champions League final between City and Inter. Now I am a City fan, but this is a video it's showing the matchday experience of going to a UEFA Champions League event. Now I know last year Liverpool fans had many issues getting into the stadium and it was chaos, it was hectic, there were tear gas, there were water sprayed, even for fans with tickets. So I was a little sceptical of the organisation that was going to be in place. If anything, I thought it was going to be tight, it was going to be stricter security, etc. However, it turned out it was complete chaos, to be honest with you. So this video is just going to show you the matchday experience of going to what is football's biggest club sporting event. So you think it's going to be a luxury. The tickets were really expensive. We paid £425 each for a ticket, let alone the flights. So yeah, strap yourselves in, because this video it's not a video I wanted to make, but this is the experience of visiting the Champions League final. So I've been to a lot of City away games, probably approaching 50 now, and I've never experienced chaos quite like this before. So UEFA wanted us to get to the ground early. They said the traffic in Istanbul's a nightmare, fair enough. The ground's actually 25 kilometres from the city centre, which is a 6-hour walk, so you can't walk it. So they provided shuttles. Inter fans were told to take the metro line. Importantly, they got to take the metro. We had to take shuttle buses from Yeni Kapı, which was the Champions League fan zone, near the city centre, which was easily accessible. So we got there about 3 p.m, which is 7 hours before kickoff at the late time of 10 p.m. So European fans could watch it at 8 p.m. And so we arrived, and the queue was about 45 minutes. There was no toilets and no water provided, which is okay. It's a 45-minute queue, it's not terrible. The toilets, you had to go into the fan zone and then around, which would have taken you about 15 minutes, which I did. Not great, but it's okay, it's expected. So we're just about 6 hours before kickoff and we're boarding the buses to get to the fan zone, which apparently takes about an hour and a half. There's terrible traffic around it. So yeah, 6 hours before kickoff. We got on the bus 45 minutes later. They weren't air conditioned. They were rammed, fans had to stand, and it took 2 hours for what should have been on Google Maps about a 45-minute journey, if that. So it took ages. There was no water or toilets again on the bus. Some elderly fans had to stand because there weren't enough seats for everybody. But we eventually arrived at the fan park. So shuttle bus was the most common way to get to the stadium. However, other people got a taxi. It wasn't recommended by FIFA. They put a tweet out saying don't get a taxi. However, you can see why people would with the standstill traffic. So I'll let Luke explain a journey which seemed about 10 times more chaotic than the bus, which is saying something.
We set off around 3 to 4 p.m, with kickoff being 10 p.m. local time. And it was just chaos from start to finish. We got a taxi ride. The taxi driver tried to scam us after quoting us a price, and we didn't fall for it, thankfully.
It was then time to make what should have been a 1 hour and 30 taxi ride towards the stadium, and it took a lot longer than that. It was chaotic, it was crazy, it was scary at times. We ended up in the back of this bloke's van after the first taxi ride.
The traffic was chaotic. It was poorly organised from start to finish. The Inter Milan fans could use the metro, but I believe some City fans on there actually got pickpocketed and robbed, etc.
It was just chaos, and then we finally got dropped off a couple miles from the ground in a really, really scruffy area.
There were no personnel to support us at all, and it was dangerous, to be honest. Definitely was not a place I wanted to be. From there, we walked 2 miles in the heat up a hill towards the stadium. As I said, not very safe at all. There was no infrastructure, no support. And when we eventually reached the stadium, it was just a nightmare to even get in, get around the stadium. Again, no support. It was just chaos everywhere. It was not fit for purpose at all. There was no way a Champions League final should have been held at that stadium at all. All in, it took a fair few hours, 4 or 5 hours to get to the stadium.
So City fans started slowly arriving at the fan park at the Ataturk, which had a great atmosphere and was really well designed by City. Although they did run out of food pretty early on. There. However, they stopped serving beer at 7:30, 2.5 hours before kickoff. And what happens when you stop selling beer? Well, everyone moves towards the stadium, which happened pretty much. And when we arrived at the stadium, it was like we were treated like animals, to be honest. And so we got into the stadium with everybody arriving at the same time. The food queues were massive, the water queues were massive. There was only 2 concession stands in the entire city end with 20,000 City fans there. And so you couldn't get water anywhere else apart from these stands. And that was the only food available, which was €10 for a cold burger. Again, you can understand at a large-scale sporting event.
Food review, €10, dry cold burger. We're overlooking Champions League final stadium, so...
However, it was the water issue that was the main problem, and a lack of toilets, to be honest with you. We went into the stadium, and seeing as we paid £425 for a ticket, the view was terrible. We were past the pitch both sides. We were quite high up, to be fair, but we were first tier, and we couldn't see the other side of the pitch for the majority of the game. We had no idea what was really going on for any of Lukaku's missed chances, for example. And the pre-match show, we arrived about 2 hours before that, so we had 2 hours to wait. Fine. The pre-match show, no football fan likes it. It's a corporate, it's a very corporate thing. No football fan wants to watch it. We were booing it, we were chanting it, and so were the Inter fans. However, the thing that annoyed us the most was it was facing towards the corporate end, which kind of sums up UEFA. The show was just facing the manager's side, not towards the City fans or the Inter fans. How easy would it have been to have a circular stage? But no, of course not. And that kind of sets the tone for the entirety of the event. City won, buzzing. I'll show a few clips from that. One of the best games, well, it wasn't the best game I've ever watched, but we won the treble. It should be an incredible atmosphere. And City fans, to be fair to us, seeing as we were treated like animals for the previous 7 hours, the atmosphere was dead good at the end. We lifted the trophy, surprise, surprise, towards the corporate end, not towards the City fans, which would have been easy to do, towards the corporate end. And then the players came running over to us. But surprise, surprise, towards the cameras. How easy would it have been to just face the City end and move the cameras around? That's UEFA. And then it was time for the way back, which was honestly about 5 times worse than the way there. About 20,000 fans were leaving at pretty much the same time in the City end, heading straight towards the shuttle buses. There was staff on the phones not really knowing what to do either. We were queuing, but then we stopped queuing and started walking into the car park. So there was about 10,000 City fans just wandering aimlessly around the car park. We eventually found the buses we were meant to get on, but the car park was gridlock, and I mean gridlock. Some City fans tried to get a taxi and walk down to the motorway. They walked along the motorway just because it was gridlock traffic, and were quoted up to €300 for a one-way journey, which is just scandalous. On these buses that the majority of us got, there was no air conditioning, no toilets, no food. One guy sat behind us actually collapsed of dehydration because he'd been in the sun all day. You weren't able to get water before we got on the buses. Because there was such long queues, like I mentioned earlier. It was dangerous, actually, and that's what the most uproar coming from the event is surrounded around. So I got back in my hotel at 4 a.m, which is 4 hours after we lifted the trophy, whereas if it had been in the city centre, it would never have taken that long. It was a terrible place for an event. I read an interesting thread that said the UEFA head of events has actually been in his position for the last 10 years. So he even survived Paris, the chaos in Paris last year. And if that shows all you need to know about the accountability at UEFA now. So that was my experience of visiting the Champions League final on Saturday. Obviously, I'm buzzing City won. I'm very grateful I got to go and witness my club win the treble. However, there is this looming cloud over the event, and we don't want it to happen in future in London next year and future Champions League events. There has to be accountability at UEFA. City and Inter have to take responsibility and complain. But yeah, I hope you found this video informative and that we can't just push it under the carpet just because we won.